This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. I am Old Gingerface, here for you, here to spread the gospel of the police, the stories that you need to hear, unedited, no holds barred. I don't even know what the word barred means, but that's what you're getting. Just as the cops lived them, the men and women of law enforcement, you can get a better appreciation for what they do for a living. So I am so happy you're here. Thank you for all the returning listeners. We do need guests, guys. They come, the guests ebb and flow in my podcast world anyway. So I need people to come on and tell their stories. I think part of it's my fault. I don't actually talk about it a lot. I have been trying to recently, so I'm talking about it now. If you're interested and you want to be a guest, thingspolicec.com, scroll down to be a guest, or just email me directly, steve@thingspolicec.com, and come on, tell me your story, share. And if you really, really love the show and you want to support it monetarily, you can do that at thingspolicec.com, or directly click the link in the show notes for the Patreon, the page there. Truly, truly appreciate that. It's gotten to the point where it actually does pay all the bills and a little extra for the time scheduling and recording the interviews and the editing and all that stuff. So it's really awesome, and I really do appreciate it every month when I get that payout, and it can go into paying bills and all stuff like that. So this year, I even made enough money in the podcast where I had to tell my accountant about it. So that's good and bad, I guess. But rest assured, if you love the show, keep listening. It's always going to be free. You don't have to join or donate. It's not going to go away that way. So don't worry about that. I notice over here, if you're watching on YouTube, this area, my green screen's not working. I don't know why. Oh, probably one of my kids. All right, well, just ignore that. Guys, I do want to do a shout out for a company, because as you know, I'm definitely not opposed to sponsors. If you want to try out a sponsorship on the show, I would love that. I need that. Let's do it. But usually it's got to be a product that I've tried, that I like, or that I think is really cool and can get behind. So I did reach out to a company recently, Core Essentials. They make a belt, like a ratcheting belt. And because I've had this belt for over a year, and I use it every day. I carry off duty quite frequently, especially if I go with my family. I always have a piece on me, just because I believe in it, and I like guns. Honestly, I like having a gun. I've always loved guns. So when you're trying to carry comfortably, everybody goes through this evolution of the perfect holster or the right belt, and then I have a basket of holsters and I have a bunch of belts, and it's super annoying and you waste a ton of money doing it. So I did solve pretty much the holster part. I have a little appendix holster I like, but I definitely unequivocally solved the belt part with Core Essentials, and they're not sponsoring the show. I reached out to them because I really wanted them to, because I love their product so much. But the owner of the company wrote back and said, we don't do podcast advertising, but I will send you a free belt and buckle of your choice. So he did that. But here's I needed one for court, like a dressier one. They're super rigid on the sides. They're reinforced. And the coolest thing about it, and the struggle we all have, is the adjustment. So this adjustment is ratcheting. I don't know if you can hear that. It goes by quarter inch. So if you're appendix carrying and you go to sit in your car, you want to just push a button and loosen it up a little bit. You can do that. It's really easy to do when it's on you. And then when you get out and you want to sync it up, you just click it in. It's phenomenal. And they have all kind of different combinations of belt buckles and types of belts. They have camo versions. I'll show you the one I have on right now that I use all the time. See this? Loosen it. Boom. It's perfect, especially if you gain and lose weight frequently like I do, because you're a piggy and you can't stop eating. They're just the best belt. I'm not going to go on too much longer about it, but go to Core Essentials, check them out, and maybe we can change their mind. Maybe if you guys buy a belt, they're only $60, which, believe me, in the world of concealed carry and firearm nerds, it's not a lot of money for a super quality product that's going to last forever. The buckles are super heavy. They're great. So if you go there and you buy one, Core Essentials, tell them Things Police See sent you, and maybe they will sponsor the show. So that's all I have to say about that. Today's guest, excited to have him, comes from a few different places, but he's currently in Montana. He's a copper out there, but he has kind of an interesting story. And side note, he thinks he might have met me in the wild as an LAPD background investigator at one point, which I don't doubt. But he was an EMT in Los Angeles County for 8.5 years, set medic for TV and film, and drove fire and EMS vehicles on TV shows and movies as well. He's now a police officer in Montana. Without further ado, let me bring on Mr. Mike May. Mike!
Steve, how's it going, sir?
Going on, man. Do you go by Mikey May? Because that comes off the tongue nicely.
I actually do. Yeah. I've been Mikey my entire life. My dad's also Mike, and just one of those things where, hey, you're Mikey. Okay, I'm Mikey. And I had a teacher in 6th grade, and she was like, you're not going to be Mikey when you grow up. You're going to be Mike. And I saw her probably, 5 or 6 years ago now. And she's like, do you still go by Mikey? And I was like, I do. And she laughed. And I was like, I told you I'd still be Mikey. But
you're like, yes, in your face, bitch.
What's that?
You're like, in your face, bitch.
Yeah. No, she was. I gave her a hard time too. I was a pain when I was a student. I only wanted to do cool things like be a cop or a firefighter or something. So that's all I focused on.
Yeah, a lot of public safety personnel. It's a common thread that I see. We're a pain in the ass in school.
Yes, that is an understatement. I think my mom still might have a Tupperware bin full of homework I never did.
Yeah, you know what? I saw. I've seen like studies on that actually to like back that up, and it's like the education system over time has become so much more feminized that young men that are like doers and active don't really thrive in like a real academic from a young age. And once they get off the rails, and then a lot of them actually end up recovering and becoming like very productive members of society. But it's just, let's be honest, like grade school and middle school, it's for Nancy boys. Sit there quietly,
Math was very hard for me. It's still to this day. I look at math and I always say it's like dyslexic Chinese where my brain just cannot process it at all. And I would spend my entire time doodling, drawing pictures on some of my homework notes. And finally, one of my teachers was like, look, dude, you suck at algebra. And I was like, I know, I'm terrible at it. And he was just like, if you draw the scene of the 2 fighter jets inverted in Top Gun and make it perfect, I will give you a C on this assignment. And I was like, dude, done. Like, if I don't have to do a homework assignment, so I drew it. He framed it. It's still up on his wall, apparently. So
yeah. Thank goodness for that, dude. I had a college professor do that with because I ended up graduating with a computer degree, which I barely attained it. It was such a dumb idea. I had so much extra help. But anyways, she had a thing where for the final, she was like, "There's an extra page on the back of the test. If you draw," it was some Christmas themed picture, like we were in 5th grade. She goes, "If you draw a creative picture about X, Y, and Z and relate it somehow to math, if you need the points, that will award you 10 points." So of course, like I spent all the time in the picture, and I believe she gave me like 40 points for the picture.
I love it. You gotta do it, right?
Dude, it was brutal. But yeah, man. So how do you think you think maybe that, because I did call a lot of EMTs and fire personnel. That's just a common theme when you're doing backgrounds. You talk to people who work on ambulances. And where were you stationed? Was it Palmdale?
So I did, I mainly was in Santa Clarita, but I was up in Canyon Country for the most part. So my partner and I were constantly going up to Lancaster, Palmdale. When I initially started, we still, the company that I'd worked for at the time, they still had a good number of the contracts, and I think they've kind of taken them back over since I've been up here. But
to AMR?
Yeah, it was. We would go into the San Gabriel Valley a lot too. And just, I don't have to tell you how diverse Los Angeles County is. You go from the desert where, if you're in West Lancaster, Quartz Hill, kind of Gorman area, you're like, oh man, I'm up in the mountains. And then, you're in San Gabriel down towards like Pomona or Whittier or something like that. And it's a whole nother world. It's LA County is it's a very, very strange, diverse place. And it was a fun place to work though, and fantastic experience for sure.
Yeah, dude, it is crazy how diverse it is. Like I lived in the high desert and I lived in LA proper. So and in between there, And I remember my neighbor, the High Desert, was best dude, and he was actually a narco detective for the sheriffs. And like their whole philosophy on law enforcement was like completely different than that actually was San Bernardino County, but it's very close, right on the border of LA. But out there in San Bernardino, he said we judge our sheriff by if he's a cowboy or not. Like we want a cowboy, and it's like what? He's like, yeah, if the sheriff rides a horse, he can rope and ride. The troops respect him. I'm like, damn, that's pretty cool.
Purdue and Riverside County are still they're still pretty Western, and I always appreciate that aspect of those departments because I think Sheriff Bianco, I like him as a sheriff. It's not the political kind of look at me type deal. He seems very concerned with his troops, very concerned with the public that he represents, and I got a lot of respect to him for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really weird, man. I went to a town for background. I don't think there is a towns in LA County. It's a city. And it was like, just so you know, you can drive outside LA, and there was this town, I think it was called Norrinco or Norelco. And Norco. And they literally had cart path. Yeah, they had maintained cart paths so you could ride your horse into town. There was horses everywhere. I'm like, this is freaking like, and filled with crazy horse ladies. Like they all gravitated to live there.
Driving big Ram 25, 3500s, 80 miles an hour on a residential street.
Yeah, totally bizarre. The place is really cool. I mean, the problem is the humanity. The people there are just full retard. You can't exist there for too long.
Yeah, it's funny too. I mean, the horse people there, I actually spent a little bit of time there, went to the Norco rodeo a few times, and it was actually a really fun time, but you kind of get that, the shadier element that creeps in from some of the surrounding cities. And, that's, I can't remember if Norco is Riverside County or San Bernardino County, but
I can't either.
They've got some, and I mean, it's just Southern California in general. I mean, I've been up here for about 2 years now. And every time I go back to California, it's just unrecognizable. And, it pains me to say it and see it because I enjoyed growing up there, but, I don't really like going back, to be totally honest.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. It's thank goodness when I was there, I had Leosa, so I could carry concealed, even though I wasn't on the job. But dude, everywhere I went, I had my hand like in my pocket. I was like, I'm gonna have to shoot this guy. Dude, I'd be like fueling up. There's like a street rat like circling your car. You're like, dude, I will shoot you. I need to get this tank of gas and get out of here.
I was. It's funny. My first time back, I was actually still in the academy. And I went back for Memorial Day weekend and went down to visit one of my buddies in Culver City. He was on duty down there and do some other stuff. And this homeless guy, I'm at like Sepulveda, and I can't remember what the cross street was, but I'm driving my sister's Prius. It was this like baby blue Prius, and it was the smallest one.
Oh, you're a mark.
Yeah, I got the windows down because it's nice. I'm like, oh man, it was like 40 back up here in Montana, and I'm like, oh man, it's 75. This is nice. This homeless guy, he's somebody that's an urban outdoorsman. I like that term. He walks up, starts screaming at me. He's like, and I'm like, dude, like, go away, please, just go away. And he actually reaches into the car and tries to grab me, and I was like, get out of the car right now, like, go away, please. And I actually used a little bit more colorful language than that, but I called my buddy and I was like, hey, bro, I just had this guy like try and jump in my car, and he was like, yeah, dude, you should have, should have hit him with the car. And I was like, well, yeah, that would be tough to explain. I'm going to get back up to Santa Clarita here.
Yeah. Dude, my buddy of mine was fueling up in South Central. He had to stop for gas. And he really, he's like, I know I shouldn't, but it was like 3 a.m. So he's like, no one's around. So he does it. And sure enough, he hears a little scurrying and he looks and there's, he's like essentially in a lit area surrounded by darkness. And these two guys just start walking towards him. He just lifts his shirt up. He's carrying in his waistband. They just both turned around and walked back into the darkness. Like, so obviously they weren't like, they weren't going to do a good thing or ask for help or something. They were going to jack you.
We're just coming to get Slurpees, man.
Right. Don't kill us, man. We just want to kill you.
Well, and that's the sad thing about everything that's happening in LA County. And I commend the coppers that are out there, still doing the Lord's work, because I mean, we don't have to get into the politics of it all because I'm sure you're very familiar with it. But, they keep tying those guys' hands, and they're forcing them to do a job with those hands behind their back. And I think that people are starting to wake up to that and just like, look, man, I understand if you don't like law enforcement, that you had a bad experience with law enforcement. I get that, but we still have a job to do. And whether or not you need us in that moment, we're still there. And we're still going to take care of the things. We're still going to deal with the criminals that you may deal
Right.
with down the line if we don't deal with them that day. And I think people are starting to realize that, yeah, like I might not like law enforcement, but we do need them, because I don't like getting my catalytic converters cut off or my makeup store robbed for the third time this week, or what have you. So,
Right.
I keep, and that the pendulum starts swinging the other way and people come to their senses down there.
Yeah, we just need a leader to come in and just cut them loose. All right, boys, go do
Yeah.
your work.
Yeah. Yep. It's go time. Bring it back, Crash, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I heard that a little bit when I was at LAPD backgrounds. They'd get like a new class, and they'd get some real go-getters, and these guys are making a lot of arrests, doing a lot of stops, tossing a lot of cars, and the captain would basically come down and go, no, 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 no. You need to take it easy. And these guys are like, what? We just went through this kick-ass academy where you basically turned us into like, street warriors here. And they're like, oh, you guys got to take it easy. And it's like, dude, you can't do that.
Yeah. It's like trying to tame like a German Shepherd, some sort of working dog. Like, no, dude, that dog wants to play. That dog wants to go out and work. You got to let it do it.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Mikey. Let's see here. Can you tell us about your first hot call you responded to?
So I actually remember this one vividly. I was thinking about it though, but I think this one's a good one just because it's not anything violent in that aspect. But I was riding with my field training officer, and it was before I had gone to the academy. And so the way they do things up here is after you've been hired, you have, I think it's a year to go get post certified. But up to then, you can work on the street, which is kind of wild to me. Our department doesn't. They won't let you do anything that could possibly get you into court cases, anything like that. Just very basic observation stuff. But I'm riding with my FTO, who also happens to be one of my best friends. That's how I ended up here, and we both worked on the ambulance together back in the day. And we get a call. This was early March. We get a call for a child through the ice. And I've heard a lot of 911 calls, over my years working on the ambulance, and that was one that I never dealt with in California.
Yeah, that must have
And
been strange being a Cali guy,
Yeah, and we were kind of across town with it, and we light up and we start going, and calls with kids. I don't have to tell you, Steve, they're never fun. It's something
Brutal.
that you're never happy to hear that. And we go flying over there. We get there, and luckily there was a good Samaritan that was walking with his wife and his little girl, going by. Ended up going into the water and pulling the kid out, and he ended up being okay. And it was just one of those things that it had been a while since I'd worked, on the ambulance or just in a 911 capacity, and I had to take a second behind the car, and so did my buddy. Just kind of catch our breath, because we were silent the whole drive over there, and I'm like thinking about, okay, man, I started undoing keepers, like I'm going for a swim, like let's
Yeah.
try and get this kid out. And luckily we have these frog ponds in town. That's what they call them, and they're not super deep, but there's mud on the bottom, and it's obviously when kids go into the water too, that instant reflex of the cold water, they take that deep breath and inhale that. And we were just very lucky that didn't happen, and everything ended up being okay. And I want to say that my chief put in a letter to the Attorney General's office for that gentleman that jumped in the water to get him some sort of, I want to say it was a Medal of Valor, Citizens Medal of Valor, something like that. I'll have to do some research, and I'll get you the answer for it. But he ended up getting it. Yeah.
Dude, that is scary. And how was it for you coming from emergency services, taking a break, and then having that, like, going through that adrenaline dump again, where you're like, oh yeah, this is what it's like. Your major muscle groups are jumping. You're like, woo.
I definitely missed it. We just going lights and sirens. I don't have to tell you. There's something special about that. It's the whole reason we get into this job, right? So we can throw the lever to setting 3 and get the red and blues going, or blues for you guys. And it was cool to have that, but at the same time, you're concerned, because you're like, here we have a child that's in the water. We don't know status. I get goosebumps when I think about that, just because you don't want kids to get hurt. You don't want anybody to get hurt, but it's with children. it's always something that strikes a little bit close to home, you know?
Yeah, and your mind always goes to the worst place. You're imagining that blue kid. You know what I mean? You're like, immediately the kid's dead. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be trauma for me. It's going to be, it's going to be, I'm going to have to talk to the parents. And then you get there
Yep.
and like, usually, maybe it's a defense mechanism of your brain. Cause then like, usually I'd say 90% of the time in police work, it's not as bad as your mind made it.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what I mean? So for you
Yep.
guys, I'm in the Northeast, obviously, and there's all kinds of things they can gear they can give you. So the old agency I was at for ice stuff, they I'll preface this by saying we didn't get any training on this, but we did have like ice discs, with rope.
Okay.
It was like a big orange disc, and it was had like a small orange rope that I think you're supposed to tie a rope to that, and then you could throw it and skip it across the ice, and it would get to the person. Hopefully they could grab it. But I remember looking at it because we would have those close calls in the winter and being like, I don't know how to use this. It's not going to work. I'm going to hit the guy in the forehead and he's going to, whatever. Because they were heavy, You guys have stuff like that for cold weather rescues?
We actually don't. I'm sure the fire department might. Um, I luckily, like I said, he was already out of the water by the time we had all responded and arrived on scene, I should say. So didn't get to see any of the rescue equipment. I was also, like I said, still kind of coming down from that adrenaline dump because it had been a while, and I was just like, whew, man, that was something else. And just reminds you why you get into this business. I mean, not that that's the sole purpose that we get into it, but we all enjoy that adrenaline, man. That's that drug keeps us going.
Yeah, part of the reason it kills us young, it's like you're running that nitrous and then you get somewhere and you're like, whoo, nowhere for this to go. You almost let me do a couple laps around my car. Woo, you know what I mean? It's like you're supposed to just drop back down to like, normal level, but they say it takes hours to truly come back down.
Yeah, and then God forbid you have that crash at the end where you're just like, oh, I need to go take a nap. Oh, I got 4 more hours left on my shift. I can't do that right now.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting too when I notice if you do have a shift with a few of those, you do kind of get they get smaller or even don't happen. Like you have one and then you go to like another horrible thing and you're like, it's almost like you're there already, and it just kind of like, so I can see how city guys, like when they just have to like over and over, they're jumping to those, they probably aren't realizing that they're just running on it. And that's why the burnout rate's so high, and that's why why states have the heart bill in case, you have a heart issue, you can go out and get paid.
Yeah, because I mean, I just remember, for one, at least back when I was on the ambulance in California, we would average probably, I don't know, between 18 and 20 calls, at least out of my station, 18 and 20 calls in a 24-hour period. And, very few of those calls got your adrenaline pumping, to be totally honest. I mean, it was mainly like the old lady, oh, I fell and, bought my whatever. But then you get like the trauma or the cardiac arrest. And a couple times where you have a few of those calls in a row and you're just like, you got a Red Bull or two on board. You're humming at this point.
So bad.
Yeah, you're just, you're like, oh, dude, I'm sitting there like 220 right now. This is awesome. You look at your partner and he's just, yeah. And then finally that day off, you're like, oh man, cool. It's the first day of my 4 days off, and you go and crash. And I've had that up here where I get home from, a week of 4 days or 5 days, 6 days, whatever. And, I've always had difficulty sleeping, but there are times where I get home and I'm like, take the vest off, take the boots off, and I'm like, I am going to bed, and I rack out, and luckily my dog comes and jumps up in bed, and he gets it, and he's like, oh yeah, we can sleep, and then he'll poop on the carpet downstairs. But
yeah, sweet. A little extra for you. Actually, I was just at church yesterday, and we have at our church, all the men there take rotations doing door warden, which means you just kind of stand outside the church near the door, because downstairs is where the kids are. So we kind of just have someone, unfortunately nowadays you have to do that. So it was my turn.
Yep.
So I'm standing there, and one of our she's like 19, she just became an EMT, she's on a wagon, she comes in late and she's drinking an energy drink and she's still got her stuff on. I'm like, how you doing? She's like, I've been awake for 24 hours straight. I'm like, there you go.
Yep. Many of those days. I actually got pulled over by a chippy once, California Highway Patrol. I'd worked in 96, and it was up in Little Rock, if you remember where Little Rock's at, up like east of Palmdale, halfway between Palmdale and Victorville. And we had just gotten off a car crash together. and I was finally going home, and I jump on the 14 freeway to go south. And apparently, I didn't remember this because I had fallen asleep, but I darted across all the lanes of traffic and almost bounced off the center median. And
Oh,
so I'm in my truck, and all of a sudden I hear CHP's, distinct siren that they have, and I look back, see the red and blues, and I'm like, what the hell? And I pull over, and I'm like, hey, was I speeding, sir? And he's like, dude, you just went across all the lanes, you almost crashed. And then he's like, wait, I just ran that call with you. I'm like, yeah. He's like, are you okay? And I'm like, honestly, I just got off a 4-day shift. Like, I don't know where I'm at. And he's like, you're almost to Acton. I'm like, all right, cool. My mom lives here. I'll go, stay with her for a little bit. And luckily it didn't crash, but just yeah, those days of being smoked, man. And I spent a lot of my 20s doing that, just working those days over and over. And I tell kids now that are getting into it, I'm like, hey, man, I know you want to make money. I know you want to be there for the department or the company or whatever, but your health is not worth it. You know,
yeah.
you've got to take care of yourself when you're young, because it translates as you get older, believe it or not. They're like, oh, yeah, what do you know, dude? And I'm like, been there. What's is it Allstate? We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or
Right.
two. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. That and it keeps you from doing things to take care of yourself too when you work that much. Like you
Oh
just
yeah.
don't want to work out. You don't want to eat right. You don't, because you're like, I need some. Now I need a reward. My reward is definitely not like a 45-minute intensive workout. It's
Like,
beer
dude,
or whatever.
yeah. Or like I got myself, garlic. I love garlic bread, so I'd like get myself a loaf of garlic bread and just pig out watching, TV show or something.
Yeah, it's good for the old ticker.
Yeah.
Mikey, can you describe a strange or bizarre thing you dealt with?
Oh man, strange or bizarre. Well, anything that has to do with meth. I don't know. I don't know how often you guys deal with meth up in your neck of the woods, but there's a direct correlation between sex toys and methamphetamine use. Uh, Usually, the more sex toys you find, the more Now, I don't want to say there's going to be more meth, but the higher probability that there will be some sort of methamphetamine
It
there.
correlates.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I might need to think about this one for a little bit, but we've got we've got a lot of strange with that going on here. But might actually have to circle back to this one
Do
if
you?
that's all.
Yeah, absolutely. So in where you live, the area you live in Montana, is there a lot of that like kind of white street rat meth head, like making one pots and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, so we get some of that, and then we get a lot of fentanyl and meth from all the larger cities that we have around us, just because we're kind of, I mean, we are centrally located to like Great Falls, Billings, Bozeman. They're all within a 2.5, 3 hour drive of where I'm at. So you get those guys bringing up meth. Fentanyl is huge. I mean, we get, and I don't know if you guys have dealt with it, but the little pressed blue, M30s, those are a fan favorite right now. So that's something that we're dealing with. And just, because we have Indian reservations up here too, the cartels will operate on those, and, they'll push drugs out from there. And so we have to deal with that. And it's, it sucks because I'm in a town of 6,000 people. They call it a city. And I'm like, I had more people in my neighborhood growing up in California, but
Yeah,
it, I don't want to see this place become where I came from, where they're trying to build a homeless shelter here in town. And, it's, I don't want to see that happen, because when they did that in my hometown, that's when we started seeing crime rise, not just property crimes, but violent crimes, vehicle burgs, that sort of thing. And we still have people here that don't lock their doors because they're so used to that way of life, where I've never locked my doors. I've never locked my car. I've never done this, never done that. Just like, hey, it's not the same world. And I hate to have to tell people that, but it's not the same
crazy.
world. And
A
people,
town of six or a city of 6,000 people is going to build a homeless shelter.
yeah, they're addressing a problem, or a solution to a problem that we really don't have. We have like two transients here in town, and one of them, he's probably my favorite transient ever. Just the funniest guy. Apparently he's independently wealthy. He just enjoys living that way, and he likes his cheap, plastic bottle brandy, and he'll roll around, and he'll mess with you from time to time, but usually just like disorderlies. Never, maybe a little criminal mischief, but he's never a violent person. He's just the silly town drunk. But they did a study, and some people stated that they were unhoused is the correct terminology, I guess, nowadays. And there are people that trying to do good, and I respect where they're coming from, but they are effectively they're going to create a problem with this because I'm sure you guys, if you've dealt with transients, their ability to get across the country and to travel is uncanny. How some of these, like, hey man, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Kissimmee, Florida. How did you get to central Montana? Or how did you get to, wherever? And there is a correlation of violence that comes with homeless shelters. And those guys have to want to abide by the rules of that homeless shelter.
Right.
How many times have they done this before in LA where they build a homeless shelter and they're like, oh, it's going to be great. They've got bathrooms and showers, but they've got to be clean. Why are they living on the streets? Maybe it's a mental health issue, maybe it's a substance abuse issue, but if they don't want to abide by those rules, and I mean, I'm sure you've dealt with this too, where other agencies will bus, problem children to your neck of the woods or something like that. And I don't want surrounding cities or towns to be like, oh, well, hey, they've got a homeless shelter. Let's start sending homeless people that way, because then you bring that mental health aspect into it and the drug use and the violence. And we have a very high elderly population too. And I don't want to see them get victimized. I don't want to see children get victimized.
Ugh.
It's Yeah, and it comes from a place of good. I don't want to speak badly on the people that are trying to put it together, but they're looking at it through the rose-colored glasses and not the actual the reading glasses or seeing glasses, if you will, because there's nothing good that comes from it, unfortunately.
Yeah, they'll just attract people from outside of town to come there if there's like a 30 bed facility. That sucks. So, like when I was on Cape Cod, we had a railroad used to go all the way down Cape Cod to the tip, all the way up to Boston, and they made most of it into like a bike path where you can ride, with your family and stuff, which is cool. But then they kind of rehabbed the commuter train from Hyannis to Boston, and the story goes, I think they started doing it 10 or 15 years ago, but like, all of a sudden the train would come into Hyannis and the doors would open and somehow homeless people would come out.
Yeah.
And now they're living on Cape Cod. It's like, yeah, because the cops in Boston are like, why don't you take a train ride, put them on the train? And they're like,
yeah, it's so nice over there. Everybody they'll give you money, they'll give you food. Why don't you go that way? Here's a couple bucks. Yep.
Yeah, the way they talk, they're going to invite you right into their home and be part of the family.
Did you mention, did I hear that correctly?
Hyannis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my dad actually, I can probably talk to you in the green room about it afterwards, but my dad did a movie there a couple of years ago. And he spent, I can't remember, I want to say he spent like 3 months on Cape Cod, and he actually thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, really? What movie was it? You remember?
I think it was a Hallmark movie, and I'm not a big Hallmark guy, so I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Yeah.
I don't think there is any big Hallmark guys.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very, very valid.
That's awesome. So you said you drove, you drove ambulances in like movies and stuff? Was that like a hookup through your dad or something?
No, actually, it was so the gentleman that owned all these apparati, if that's the plural form. He lived out in my neck of the woods, and a couple of my buddies that I worked with on the ambulance had gotten hooked up with him. And one of the days they reached out and they were like, "Hey man, you want to come drive?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And so ended up working on quite a few shows and movies. My favorite one that I worked on was probably Bosch. If you ever watched Bosch on Amazon, I thoroughly enjoy that show. I think they did a really good job of representing the LAPD and sticking to that realism. I'm a kind of a stickler for realism in law enforcement TV shows, just because I don't have to tell you how often we deal with people where they're like, "Why don't you just go kick in their door and steal it?" And it's like, no, like we need to get a search warrant. It doesn't work that way. And the perception that television and film gives the general public about law enforcement, EMS, fire, like that's something that I thought that Bosch did a very good job of portraying it accurately. So
I used to work with a couple of people that worked with that guy and the people they're portraying in the show, and they were fans of it because of the exact same reason. They said it was watchable for them.
Yeah, so that was cool. And then we did Lethal Weapon, which the remake, the TV show. And I'm a big Sean William Scott fan. I'm a hockey guy, so Goon is one of my favorite movies. And the whole day, I just wanted to meet him. Like, I really don't care about meeting actors or anything like that. But I was like, oh, dude, I just want to give him the opportunity, and just tell him how much I love it. He ended up being like one of the nicest people I've ever met. We stood and talked for 15 minutes and just salted the earth. The exact opposite of how you picture him as Stifler. He was just like,
Yeah.
yeah, he was just the nicest guy. And so that was pretty cool. But yeah, did that for a while in conjunction with the ambulance gig, and it was fun. But it's the movie studios, and it's a different world working there. To be totally honest.
Yeah, yeah, it's really weird. I touched in some Hollywood stuff when I was out there, and it is bizarre. And there's a lot of like, I don't know, weird desperation, in the Hollywood world, of people who are on the fringe of like getting in there or being part of it
Yeah.
permanently, and it's really kind of weird, kind of gross in some areas. I worked for Harry Winston and delivered
Okay.
valuable diamonds to, like, Selma Hayek and Ashley Judd and Olivia Davis, or she black actress who won an Academy Award, and just bizarre. They just live
Yeah.
in a different Viola Davis.
Yes.
They just like operate in a different. To me, like, I'm courtesy and polite to everybody. Like, that's how I'm operate. And to like work, I worked for this high end boutique where everybody there was like super materialistic, and some of them were nice, but like mostly just kind of dicks. And then like the celebrity themselves were like, you're giving them $15 million worth of diamonds. They'll walk out the door and not sign for them. Thank you. And then, like, I remember the boutique manager chasing one of these movie stars, and she wouldn't sign. And he's like, okay, guys, I'm going to have to take these diamonds. I'm like, you're not. She's getting into the limo. I'm not going to grab her. Like, that's not I'm not in my job description. So her assistant ended up signing for him. And it was just like, you just can't stop for a second and sign the paper. Like, we gave you these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I definitely don't miss the vapidness. I don't know if that's the correct way to use that term, but just I don't know, man. I know people tend to make fun of the Midwest and some of the smaller areas, but it's just such a much better quality of life out here. It's simple. People are real. They're honest.
Yeah.
There's none of the facade of, oh, I want to look like this. Like, people are. That's one of the nice things about being a cop up here too. Is I get tired of waving at people, and I say that in the best way possible. I mean, everybody waves to the police up here for the most part with all their fingers, which is cool because I don't think too many people
Yeah.
can say that. Some of the other places where cops aren't regarded as highly. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Same where I work, dude. I mean, I work in it's a little department that covers 2 towns in Western Mass, and it's a liberal area, but same thing. I've been totally shocked the 3 years I've worked there. It's all like, I'll do like a road work detail or direct traffic, and every single car is like, hey, hey. And then like they're just going to the post office and coming back. They wave on the way back. It's like, oh my gosh. It's like, it's nice, but it's kind of bizarre.
I feel bad if I'm looking for something and like I don't wave at somebody. I'm like, wow, man, where's that plate? I'm trying to find it. And somebody's like, hey, I'm like, God, yeah, I know. Hi, like, sorry.
Yeah,
Well, I
dude.
was
Small
working.
towns is like driving a boat. When you're on the water, everybody waves. It's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
All right, Mike. Can you tell us about your most intense or terrifying call you've dealt with?
Oh man, so this one will be at least. I've got a couple, but this one probably takes the cake. So this was, I think, my second week of FTO. I'm with the same field training officer that I was telling you about earlier for the child through the ice, and like I said, it's my best friend. We had a very professional relationship on duty. There was that whole like, hey, when we're working, we're not buddy buddy. Like, I'm the FTO, you're the boot. This is how shit goes. I'm like, yes, sir, absolutely. So we were looking to roll up somebody on a warrant. I can't remember exactly what the warrant was for, but she was female, very, very, very large female, history of psychosis, severe meth abuse. Just so she had actually charged my buddy with a knife once, and he talked her down, didn't have to tase her or shoot her, which was super cool. So we had ourselves like a little pre-shift brief, like, hey, if we see her, this is how we'll go about it, that sort of thing. And
You guys went looking for this warrant? That sounds like one I would just put in the back drawer.
Yeah, no, it was a slow night, and it was probably I think it was August, and it was nice out. I'm like, oh man, we were actually going through a spell where it was like 105 during the day, and so we
Wow.
kind of. I know people are like, "Oh my gosh, in Montana." I'm like, "Yeah, dude, it gets hot up here, and at 4,400 feet, like, that's that's brutal." But anyways, we're driving around, and so it's my FTO and I, and then our other partner in another car, and he's like, "Hey, I got her here," and so we come up and we hit our lights. We go to jump out, and we're like, "Hey, stop! You got a warrant!" And she immediately turns around, and she looks like a caged animal, and she's just like, "Yeah," screaming, and she's like, "I'll fucking kill you." Reached into her backpack, and I'm like, holy shit. And I go for my gun, and I like kind of go to punch out, and she pulls out this 16-inch lag pole that's got two hex nuts on the end of it. So it's probably about yay long, and she's swinging this thing, and she takes off running through this property, and we're like foot pursuit. I'm like, holy shit, dude, this is awesome. Like, this is so
Yeah.
freaking cool. I'm with my best friend doing this, and our other partner comes screeching in. He jumps out, pulls his taser. He's giving her commands. She ends up running to the back corner of this property, and we come around the corner. And I remember just like coming around the corner with my gun and being like, "This is nuts, dude! Like, this is obviously what I signed up for." But I just was like so stoked, and I remember that adrenaline rush, and we end up. So my buddy's gonna go hands on if we have the opportunity to do that. Obviously, we're not approaching her because she is armed with a weapon. But he's positioning himself. She ends up taking cover behind this snowplow truck that's at the back of this property. She had kind of run to this back fence, and she realizes she's at the end. We're keeping distance. We're trying to give her commands like, "Hey, calm down. Like, just put your hands behind your back. Let's talk about this." And she is like, "Oh, you're the fucking devil. I'll fucking kill you." Screaming the same typical crazy stuff. And so my buddy gets into position in front of the vehicle, and he's going to try and tackle her as she starts coming back. And so as she starts coming, he trips and goes down. And I watch her spin and turn, and she goes to swing on his head. And I remember, like, this played out. This is what's so crazy about the way the human body works in those high stress scenarios. I'm taking up slack on my trigger, and I don't have to tell you because you're a Glock guy. Every Glock trigger is kind of the same. The stock
Mm-hmm.
Glock trigger has like that same, take up and break. And I'm taking up slack because I'm watching her swing on my buddy. And about 3/4 of the swing through, she changes her mind, and she goes towards our other partner, who ends up tasing her. And
Woo.
she goes, but I thought I was going to see my best friend get smoked. And I thought I was going to have to kill somebody. I'm thankful that did not go down that way. I didn't want to have to explain to his wife, why I got her husband killed or anything like that. And she ended up getting tased, went down, and it was so funny because she made this noise where it was just, "What?" And she goes down, and she ended up peeing and pooping her pants, and
Oh, jeez.
yeah, but it was pretty wild. Just the taking up slack and the trigger, and then I watched it back on my body cam later as we were doing our reports. And it's wild to me how fast everything played out. Like in my head, it felt like this whole instance was like a minute and a half long. But in my body cam, it's like that. It's maybe freaking a second and a half, 2 seconds. And I was just like, holy crap. But you can still remember all of those intense, just, little pieces of it, things that, you saw. And yeah, that one was pretty wild. Now we can laugh about it just because it was funny how she went down. But, it definitely could have gone sideways, and we were very lucky that it didn't.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Question for you: how do you guys deal with someone who's got poo poo and pee pee in their pants? What did you do with that?
Well, we called medical for her because she
Perfect.
did. Yeah, I hate doing that. Being a former stretcher fetcher, I've apologized to all of our EMTs. I'm like, hey, dude, sometimes like this is what we got to do. Like, I hate to do that to you, but just know that I'm there in spirit with you. And our ambulance crews up here, they're pretty awesome. Same thing with our fire department. We share a building with the fire department. Those guys are, they come over to our side, we go over to theirs, and we hang out. They're all stellar dudes and ladies. The one of the lieutenants is a female, and she's a gangster, man. Like, they're all just awesome cats.
Nice. So, so they transport her, and then do you guys have to station someone with her, or can you get like a bail commissioner or the equivalent to go there and release?
So They actually came and evaluated her. They didn't transport her, and we ended up transporting her up to jail. And they have an isolation room and that sort of thing where they put her.
So they took did that. So the jail took care of the poo poo and pee pee.
Well, I can't remember exactly what we did, just because my
I'm
brain.
obsessed with knowing it, Mike.
No, my favorite thing to do, honestly, was like we would call the ambulance crews out. I'd be like, "Hey, can I steal some blankets and just kind of burrito somebody up?
Yeah.
From on that way they can sit on it, and you keep it enclosed because washing poop out of the back of your car is never fun. There was a there was a stop that I had made, and the gentleman ended up having a small dog, and my buddy's the Montana Highway Patrol trooper up here. He was like, "Oh yeah, dude, I'll take the dog," because we were taking the guy to jail, and the dog had diarrhea all over the back of his Charger.
Oh.
It's like, oh, dude. And he was doing me a courtesy, backing me on this stop because my partner had to bounce to go handle something else. And I was just like, dude, I'm so sorry about that. I feel terrible. And, he was like, oh, it is what it is,
Yeah, get the hose out. Well, hopefully he didn't. Hopefully he didn't have like fabric seats or anything. You have like the.
I've never seen the back of his Charger, and he just got a new patrol vehicle. He's in an Explorer now, so hopefully.
All right,
hopefully,
there you go.
Exactly. I'll do a new one.
Damn, that's funny.
Yeah.
Mikey, can you talk about a positive encounter you've had? Heartwarming.
Absolutely. So when I first got up here, there was a male juvenile that we've dealt with. He's a 16, 17-year-old. And, it's one of those kids where it was like, oh, he's a knucklehead. He's going to grow up to be a knucklehead, that sort of thing. And so I ended up dealing with him I wasn't dealing with him. I was there for one of his family members. And he was, standing on his front porch, and he's like, man, you guys, like, you're always giving me shit. And I'm like, it's my first time dealing with you, dude. Like, I don't know you. Do you know me? And he's like, no. And I'm like, check it out. I don't think you're a bad kid, dude. I think you're a teenager who's a knucklehead. And I was a teenager who's a knucklehead. I get that. All right. Like, just keep your nose clean and you won't have any contact with us, dude. And sure enough, for about a year, we didn't have any dealings with him. And I kind of started coming into contact with him. He worked at one of the sandwich shops up here. And, I'd talk with him. And his mom actually wrote me a Christmas card and brought it down to the PD. And it said, just basically thanking me for keeping her son out of trouble and affecting a positive change in his life. And, I told him the other day, I was like, tell your mom that card's going to be on my refrigerator for the rest of my life. Like that's one of my proudest moments for sure, where he was constantly getting in trouble and we really don't, I mean, he's still kind of a knucklehead, I can always tell when he drives by cause he'll rev his truck up and whatnot, but he's turned a pretty good kid. And, it made me happy and very proud that his mom felt the urge to reach out like that, because that's not something that we get very often.
Yeah, that's great, man. So he's got no dad, or dad doesn't live at home.
Yeah, I think his dad might be incarcerated. I'm not entirely sure, but just he's he's a good kid. He just has never, and not that I'm his male role model or anything like that, but just showing him like, hey, bro, not all cops are jerks. Like, just keep your nose clean. You can be a knucklehead, just be a knucklehead in the right places, right? Like,
right. Yeah, man. How sad is that? Like, just some random dude, you come into his life and give him some, a little bit of hard advice, and like that's all it took. It's like it's just that's what he needed. He needed a male role model, like even just for a second. You know what I mean? They say like women have such a hard time raising males alone because they're not men. The young men need that in their life. So the fact that you could do that, and because how many times since then have you tried to have that conversation with somebody, then you keep seeing them and you're like, well, this kid's not listening.
well, luckily, I mean, I've been on nights for like the last 4 months, so I'm not
seeing people. Yeah.
But I mean, the kids here for the most part are pretty good. We don't really have too many of those knuckleheads. I mean, there's a few where you can try all you want, but they're kind of set in their ways. But the other big thing is that I try to remember myself is like, and I'm sure you dealt with it too when you were a kid, is those cops, even when you were polite and respectful and friendly and compliant, those guys that were just dicks to be dicks. And I hated that. Like, that was something that always drove me nuts. If I was like, the first time I ever got pulled over, the deputy was one of the rudest people I've ever dealt with in my life. I was driving my dad had a Prius, so you can kind of see how my family leans, just sidebar. But but it didn't have automatic headlights. And my truck that I was driving at the time did. I was coming back from, I worked at a sandwich shop, going home, pulls me over and he walks up and he just starts berating me. And I have no idea what I've even been stopped for. And I was like, sir, I'm so sorry. And I'm still in the uniform from the sandwich place. And, just so rude. And then ended up writing me a ticket. And, I think I was 18, maybe 19 years old. And I never understood. And, I'm familiar with law enforcement. So I knew that, hey, man, maybe he's having a tough day. Maybe he just came from something horrible. But your average citizen isn't going to think that way. And even if we do have a shitty day, we still have to remember that we work for these people, right?
Right.
They're the ones that effectively, they sign our paycheck. So treat them with respect, treat them with dignity, even if they're being assholes, man. Kill them with kindness. I'm a firm believer in killing them with kindness. And then, if it comes time to flip that switch and to go into asshole mode, then do that. But for the most part, just be nice to everybody. And I know that sounds stupid, small town copy, but I've seen some great cops in LA County do that, man, where they, talk dudes out of gnarly situations because they took that time to, hey, talk to me, bro. What's going on here? Like
Right.
that, just telling somebody, talk to me. That can be something that's so huge in, hey, what's going on in their life, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a line. Like, you definitely have to be able to be kind and give people the benefit of the doubt, but they also need to know that you're not weak. You're not a pushover.
Yeah.
Like, if it goes the wrong way, we're going to take care of business. But it helps you, like, I one of the best stories I ever heard about me, which I appreciated, was, I wrote somebody a speeding ticket, and I'd been on the job for years, and he went to contest it at the magistrate's hearing, and he told this story about me that was totally out of character, and it didn't happen. But they knew me at the court from working for years, and they were like, Officer Gould doesn't write a lot of money tickets at all, and we know him personally, basically, and don't really think he told you to go F yourself or any of that stuff, so you're responsible. And it was great, and it got back to me from somebody who was in the court and heard it go down, and they were like, yeah, dude, evidently you have a good name with the judge, because they weren't buying this guy's story because of your past, the way you've operated in the past and things they've heard about you, how you deal with people. So it gives you credibility,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just, the other thing that I tell people is, think about what you were like before you were law enforcement and you were dealing with law enforcement and somebody was a jerk to you.
Right.
Remember, everybody's a people. Everybody's a people.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. Broken out over here. I'm like trying to stay up because I'm like, oh man, I got to go back to nights this week. I was just on days. I'm like, my schedule's so ass backwards that I'm kind of spinning circles. Forgive the beard too. I've never grown a beard in my life, and that's part of our grooming standards is I can grow one. So I'm like, oh dude, I'm gonna grow a beard out.
You gotta try it, dude.
Yeah.
It's coming in, man. It's not bad.
Yeah. The mustache. So this is the only hair on my body that comes in blonde. I have no idea why, but my mustache comes in blonde. So I'm like trying to buy I'm old enough now and there's enough gray hair up here where I can buy just for men touch of gray, and people aren't going to be like, oh, he's going to go dye his beard.
Yeah, you're going to have the Neapolitan. You're going to have some gray, some blonde, some brown. Those are good. I like that. We have a neighboring chief that grows his beard out in the winter, and he has huge, he's a Greek guy, huge thick black beard with the white stripe down the side, and he just looks like a sea captain, like he should have a corncob pipe, Great beard, though.
Some ancient warrior, something like that.
Yeah, it's great.
Killer.
So, Mikey, popular question: advice to new officers, people getting into it. You have an interesting perspective, having kind of worked both sides. You did emergency medicine, and now you kind of transitioned to police. But what would you tell people looking to get into it, or people that are on the fence about doing the job?
Well, the biggest thing is do it. I mean, especially right now, I wouldn't lie and say, law enforcement's probably the most hated job in the United States right now. And it's for totally unfair reasons. Everybody always says, oh, you shouldn't judge the action, you shouldn't judge many on the actions of one or something along those lines. And, it should, that same courtesy should be extended to law enforcement. But if you do decide to pursue this career, the biggest thing, like I was just saying, man, just remember we're all humans. we're all people. Like, guys are going to be assholes. That's inevitable. There are going to be people that want to fight you. That's inevitable. I've had a victim try and fight my partner and I, and we were like, dude, what, why, but
Yeah.
that's how it is. Um, the biggest thing is remember how to talk to people. If there's no reason to be an asshole to them, don't be. Don't. I'm a firm believer in not being a dick just to be a dick, and if you are that kind of person, this job isn't for you, especially in this day and age, man, because it will get out. There'll be a video of you. I mean, you're always on camera. Conduct yourself to the best possible way that you can, right? Be a good representation of your department, be a good representation of this profession. People call us, they expect us to be there, come help them out, save the day, whatever it is. you know Make sure you look sharp. So one of my favorite TV shows is Southland. I don't know if you ever saw that, but
I haven't seen
it's
it, no.
so it's actually another great LAPD cop show that ran from 2009 to I think like 2013. But the very first episode, the training officer says, "Look sharp, act sharp, be sharp." And I know that sounds super corny, but that's something that I've like kind of stuck with my entire both AMR and law enforcement career, because it's true. Like you think about somebody that rolls up and you're look like a slob, you're like, dude, what the heck, this guy?
Yeah.
But you look sharp, and I understand we can't always look sharp. It's we're in that weird season where it's snowing and then it rains and then it's warm, so it's constantly muddy. My uniform is getting splatter on it all the time, but I still conduct myself professionally. I still speak to people professionally. You know, I would say get comfortable talking with everybody. Working on the ambulance was a great way to get comfortable talking to folks from all different backgrounds of life. One call you could be talking to the very sweet old lady in the nursing home who's like, "Oh, well, I keep tripping over this here rug," and like, "Hey, Ethel, maybe we should move that rug so you don't trip over."
Right.
And then the next one, you're talking to some OG Crip who's, East Side Lancaster, and he's like, "Man," you're like, "Yeah, dude, hey, it's all good." And so you need to be able to, I don't want to say that they're different personas, but, you almost have to tailor your conversation to speak to each of those people, right? You're not going to talk to the gangster the same way that you're going to talk to the old lady.
Right.
And, like, you can try it, see how that goes. I don't think it's going to go very well. I mean, I've had the hardest punch I've taken was from a 99-year-old woman, but that's, you know, um, but just never lose sight of why you got into this job too, right? We all say that we want to help people, and some people may be lying about that. I truly do want to help people. I want to keep this community safe. I want to keep these streets free of drugs. I don't want these kids to fall into the same stuff that I saw some of my friends fall into, where I was responding to overdoses on kids that I knew. That's just remember who you work for and remember who you're representing, and just always do your best to be an accurate, just to be a good representation of that department. And people are going to recognize you on your days off too, especially if you work in a small area. I mean, there have been times where I've had people come up to me on my days off and they're like, "Hey, Officer Man, look, we're humans too. We deserve, hey, we want to go drink a couple beers, get a ride home though, because people are going to be like, that dude's driving home and he's drunk, or that
Yeah.
dude's driving drinking 3 beers. Just you know do your best. I'm not saying you got to be a moral pillar, but do your best to be a good representation of your department. The other thing that I would say is, if you want to work somewhere else, if you're thinking about moving somewhere else, go check out some of the PDs there. Do as many ride-alongs as you can. That's something that I wish I would have done some more ride-alongs. I mean, I did a lot, but I wish I would have done more, just because they're fun. And we don't have Crown Vics up here, so luckily when I rode out with my buddies at LASD, they all had Crown Vics, and I got to experience a little bit of police work in those things.
Yeah, they're
But
going away.
I know it breaks my. And up here, they were never that prevalent. They were big Impala guys up
Oh
here, which
yeah,
is.
rear wheel drive in the snow is not the best.
I But the Impala just doesn't have. The Crown Vic was the quintessential, at
I
least
know.
for choppers. That was,
Do you guys
the
run do you run the Explorers at all?
yeah, we do. I actually I love my Explorers. So we
Yeah, I
have
think
two
those are great.
Explorers. We have two Explorers and we have two F-150s, and we had a couple Tauruses. And I drove the Taurus once. The
Hate it.
suspension flapped out, and I hit a dip, and I thought that I crushed my sciatic nerve again, and I was like, I'm never driving this car
Dude,
again.
it's tiny. When you get in that car, they're supposed to design it for cops, but you feel. And then if you really look around, dude, this was what wigged me out. When you really look around at the windows, they're very like. I'm
Oh,
like, dude, if I got in a wreck, I'd never get out of this car. The window,
it's
I can't even fit out the window.
it's horrible visibility. That was one
Yeah,
thing that way I sat down in it and I was looking around and I'm like, just the way the A pillars and the B pillars are set up, it's not a very I didn't like the fact that I couldn't see what was going on behind me.
no, they did. It
But
was a bad job. Bad job, Ford. You did a bad job.
the Explorer is it's a phenomenal car, and I never thought that I would actually feel that way just because I have been such a Vic fan my entire life. But
Yep.
it's all drive, it's quick when you need it to be. I have driven
Same.
through some gnarly snow in that car, and I love it. I mean, I actually it's my favorite car. But it's like, oh man, why don't you drive a truck? Like, why don't you drive one of the patrol trucks? I'm like, because I don't want to drive a patrol truck. Like, I like how the Explorer handles. I mean, that thing, it'll turn on a dime.
Yep.
It's a great car. But back to the question at hand here. If you are thinking about leaving the state or the city that you're currently residing in, go do ride-alongs with the department or agency, whatever you got, wherever you're going to go, and see if A, that's a place that you want to work, and B, that's a place that you want to live. Do some exploration, do some traveling. If let's say, oh, dude, I love Nashville, Tennessee. I love Nashville. I think my girlfriend and I want to move to Nashville. Then go to Nashville, do a ride along with Nashville Metro, I think it is, or
Yep.
whatever age. Just get that experience and do some research into your agencies, see what their policies are, talk to officers and tell them, hey man, what's a no bullshit assessment of this place? How do you like working here? Because for my department, I know it's a small department. We're not super busy. We're not LA. We're not Chicago or New York. But I had a friend of mine get murdered last year, Deputy Ryan Klinkenbroomer, and I was actually working the night that it went down, and I had a couple buddies reach out to me when we found out that it was Clink, and I obviously broke down. Like it was very tough,
Yeah.
and I was working with my assistant chief, and I walked into his office. I kind of had some tears in my eyes, and I told him what was up, and that man extended some of the greatest compassion I've ever seen. We were super short staffed at the time too. We were down to, I want to say, 8 or 9 officers, and I asked if I could go back to California for his funeral, and my chief, assistant chief, captain, the entire department, without even, nobody bitched or moaned. Everybody picked up a shift so I could go back for a week and be there for that. And my chief also approved the use of our memorial bands through the end of September from the date that he had gotten murdered. And that to me is something that will always stay with me, and I will always be thankful for my department. And I learned how rare that kind of is, unfortunately, throughout law enforcement. Like there have been more guys than not that have been like, my department would never do anything like that, and I
Yeah.
hate like that. But talk to the guys about the places that you're looking at, and just see how they like it. Because not saying you get stuck at agencies, but I've never been a big person for jumping around, going from place to place. Like, I usually like to get somewhere and be like, oh, this is nice. Like, cool. Let's, we'll stay here. We'll stay here. And I know that my town is inevitably going to grow. I hope it's not anytime soon, but it will grow, and our call volume will expand. The types of calls that we deal with will expand. Um, it's just do your research. Do your research and be nice. When you get into fights with people, as soon as the handcuffs are on, that fight's over. There's no reason to keep kicking
Right.
them or hitting or anything like that. That was told to me by one of my mentors, who's a LAPD guy and a fantastic dude. But just always be professional. Always be the best version of yourself that you can be. Because the public's always looking at us. Whether it's, last little bit here too. Whenever kids wave at you, dude, turn the lights on for them, wave to them. I
Yeah, I
know,
love doing that.
yeah, kid, man, that was my favorite thing. Whether it's fire truck, ambulance, cop car, wave at them, and they're just, oh, you make their day. And you never know, that could be that little piece where it was like, I remember this police officer turned his lights on, and ever since then I wanted to be a cop. And that carries.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
always take the time to say hi to kids, always take the time to be polite and friendly with kids. If you got time and check out your patrol car, hell yeah, dude. Come take a peek here, this is it. Just be a good representation to your community, of your agency,
Yeah.
and just be a good person. We've unfortunately, the actions of a few crappy coppers have gotten the entire profession in hot water. And, we should all, every single one of us, be striving every day to write that opinion to write the public opinion of law enforcement, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I really like, it's such a good point you made about the, everybody's me watching you. Cause I don't think people, especially if you work at a smaller place like I do and you do, and you live in the community, or you go into the community when you're not working, I don't think I'm overstating it. Maybe it's a little bit. It's not quite an accurate statement, but you are like a local celebrity, and because people really pay attention. Like, oh, that guy's cop. Oh, and then they just watch you because it's. I mean, it's not. I don't think they're like. It's not malicious, but to them, I say this all the time. Even your little PD in your little town is like a clandestine organization to people. They really don't know. Most people don't know what you're doing, what goes on in there, what happens during an arrest. You know what I mean? They hear rumors. Yep. They don't know. They see your lights on places at the bad house on that street, and they're like, I wonder what's going on. They never really find out. But yeah, when they see you, they are really paying attention. And you don't realize that when you're a young cop, but you figure it out. And that's why you wear the ball cap low, or you kind of, because I've had multiple times when I've ran into, and to your point, my dad told me the same thing when I got hired, because he was a cop for 32 years. He said, you know what? Be a gentleman with everybody, treat everybody with respect in the booking room. And he said, until it's time not to. And you'll know when that time is, because you have common sense and you have a good head on your shoulders, because you're going to see this person again. You're going to see them at Stop and Shop when you're grocery shopping with your family. And that did happen to me. And the biggest asset we have with that was seeing someone you arrested in public is somehow, like 90% of the time, if you're not wearing the uniform, they don't know who you are. Yeah. They look right at you. Well, and also they're usually impaired somehow. So, but I've walked right by people and like, oh, hey, excuse me. Yeah. Hey, good, and they're like, oh, geez, that guy really was nasty. And he had no idea who he was. But there's been other times when people do give you the hairy eyeball, and they are mad at you. And you know what? It's going to happen even if you are a gentleman. But at least if you are a gentleman, you didn't cause that. You were still, you acted right, and they're at fault. So you know that you're good. Your conscience isn't tortured by that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's an instance in which we had a guy that, had violated his conditions. He wasn't supposed to be drinking, and he was, shithoused. And, my partner and I were so nice to him. I mean, we rolled up and, I'm saying, hey man, here, what's your name? What's going on? All right. So this is the report that we got, and we just want to make sure you're okay. And he was just a dick, like kind of doing the sovereign thing where constitutionally,
free man traveling.
Yeah. And so I'm just like, all right, man, simmer down. And he decides that he wants to be an ass. So we take him down gently, but he goes down on his face. We call medical out, and I'm like, hey, listen up. These guys are here to evaluate you. They have nothing to do with me. You will be nice to them, okay? Because they are here to make sure that you are safe, that you are not hurt. Do not be mean to them. And so, they come do their assessment. He's kind of lipping off, but it gets to a point where we can kind of start cracking jokes, and so we start cracking jokes. And I try to do that, to release some of the tension.
Sure.
But he ended up we took him to the hospital. Once they had cleared him, he was still being combative. And, we ended up tossing him into the back of the truck. And it's just like, all right, dude, like we gave you every opportunity. And I think it was one of our county attorneys was watching the body cam of it. She was like, both you guys had outstanding restraint. I mean, like the fact that how he was talking to you, getting in your face. I will say there was one point I was growing out the mustache before I'd grown the beard. and he turns around and looks at me and he goes, "You kind of look like Officer Dangle," like Reno.
That's great.
And I was like, "Thanks, man." I took that as a compliment. But back to the bizarre question. I told you we would
Yeah.
come back, and so I got it for you. So one night, I was on patrol in the west end of town, and it was actually New Year's of last year, and I was just cruising around, and I'm looking at traffic, and this car comes ripping in super fast, and speed limit through town is 25. Every town in Montana, for the most part, 25 miles an hour. And I'm looking at this car, and I'm like, I can tell it's going way faster. So I'm trying to get positioned so I can get my rear-facing radar to catch it. Of course, right when you need it, it's not. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to shoot down a side road and I'm going to pace him. So I'm going down the side road and I'm trying to pace him and I can't see the car anymore. And I'm like, what the hell? So I come back to our main intersection and I look eastbound or westbound from where the car came, and then I look eastbound and the car's already like 3 streets up, and I'm like, holy shit! All right, so I go taking off after the car. At this point, they've slowed down. They're doing 25, but I'm behind them. I can run the plate. I run the plate to my dispatcher, and she comes back and she asks, "Are you alone?" She gives our code for are you alone, because this person has a felony, and I'm like, send it. She goes, yeah, that the vehicle's reported stolen out of Billings, it's attached to a carjacking. And I'm like, I'm gonna be trafficked with that vehicle. So this is my first high risk stop that I'm doing by myself.
Yeah.
So my gosh, this is awesome. So end up stopping the vehicle, jump out, start making commands. And I can hear, I'm putting my traffic out over the radio, hey, I've got two at gunpoint. And I can hear my partners. And we have a very close working relationship with the sheriff's office, too. I was actually living with one of the deputies at the time, still one of my best friends, will forever be one of my best friends. I could hear him say, I'm en route, I'll be there in 30 seconds. And I could hear him. He was probably about a half mile away, and I could hear his truck just screaming. Same thing. My partner shows up, and so I'm like giving this woman commands. I'm like, step out of the vehicle, and her passenger is like doing this with his hands out the window, and I'm like, tell your friend to keep his freaking hands out the window where I can see. I'm like, passenger, put your fucking hands out the window. And she's like, he had a stroke, and I'm like, wait, like he actively is stroking? What? Really? Like, what just happened? And she's like, oh, he's having a stroke. And she ended up being like intoxicated. So basically, this vehicle, she purchased this Cadillac, a 2013 Cadillac, for $68. And
Makes sense.
yeah, so we read her Miranda, and we start asking her questions. And so she's like, oh, I purchased this car, and she shows us this bill of sale, and the grand total price of the car was $3,000, but she had taken possession of it with a down payment of $68. And I'm like, that's not a little strange to you? And she's like, no, no, no. And we end up finding, there's meth in the car. There's a bunch of other stuff. The old man, after we had taken her into custody, we had a couple of deputies, and my partner ended up carrying that old man out of the vehicle. And we requested medical to come evaluate him, because the stroke, I couldn't verify if he had a previous stroke or if he was actively having a stroke at that time.
Right.
But I wish I had a picture of it. So one of the baggies of meth that we found had this hologram Samuel Jackson from Pulp Fiction. That scene where does he look like a bitch, and he has that face?
Yeah.
But have this hologram face of him on this baggie of meth, and I just thought that was one of the funniest things ever. And then you got your sex toys, because there's meth involved, and
right. A bag of dildos.
So I got another side note for bizarre. So this wasn't my call, but this was one of my coworkers. They were searching a vehicle that drug use and stuff, and like we said, sex toys and meth. They find this latex torso, and it's got like boobs and all the correct female anatomy,
Yep.
but it's been bungee corded, and it was mounted to plywood, and so this guy would have it in the back of his vehicle so he could just go to town on it.
Oh,
and
jeez.
my buddy told me that when they went to do the search and he ended up sliding that thing out, that it had left a snail trail, which
Oh.
which is pretty gross. So yeah, but
oh man,
yeah,
sad state of affairs.
Yeah, but that's just the perks of this job. You'll get to do, seriously, you can do so many crazy things just work wise. I mean, the nice thing about working for a small agency, I will say, and this back to advice for young coppers, working for a small agency out of the gate, we don't have detectives. So when we catch a case, we see it through all the way through. And that doesn't matter if it's a petty theft from Albertsons or a homicide. Yes, we might request assistance from DCI because they have resources. That's the Division of Criminal Investigation here in Montana. But you learn to be a good investigator. You learn to interrogate people. You learn how to do interviews. My department is very big on trainings. They love for us to go to trainings. Make sure that a department you apply for, or make sure the department that you apply for feels the same way, because we're always supposed to expand our knowledge base, right? We're always supposed to be bettering ourselves. Working for an agency that's not going to pay for you to go to training, not that that's necessarily a bad place, but it is definitely very nice to have an agency that's like, oh, dude, you want to go here? Here, sick. We'll sign it off for you. Go have fun. And I've gotten to go to some fantastic trainings. I mean, my first week on the job up here, it was the first week after I had started. They were like, hey, you like to talk to people? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to put you in a hostage and crisis negotiations course. And I'm like,
Nice.
all right, cool. And the instructor that came up was this guy from Texas, super cool, super funny. And, he's asking everybody, hey, guys, go ahead and say where you're from, how long you've been a cop. And I'm like, what's up, guys? I'm Mike. Been a cop for 7 days. And he's like, what the fuck, 7 days? And I'm like, yeah. And we ended up talking, and, I gave him some of my background, and, you get exposed to all these crazy things at small agencies that, at least my perception based on what I knew about like LAPD and LASD was like, you work patrol and then you promote to senior, and then you might get handpicked to go do a special assignment, something like that. Like here, if I like doing drug stuff, I can keep going to classes for drug stuff. I want to
Yeah.
be a well copper for my agency, but I certainly enjoy the narcotics investigations and whatnot. So I might tailor my stuff towards that. We have guys that and God bless them, they love sex crimes. That is their jam. They are all about that. And they particularly go after that sort of thing. We got guys that love doing DUI hunting. So don't get dissuaded by smaller agencies just based on call volume. Like, yeah, you might not have the sexy stuff that large agencies do, but at the same time, look at the surrounding area of the department that you're going to and realize like, well, hey, the cost of living is very good here. It's a beautiful area, and they're going to have an influx of people in the next 10 years. So I can get in here, buy a house cheap, get used to the community, and then in a couple years when I'm a seasoned cop, I'll have some cool stuff to go play around in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you just with an agency that size, you just end up producing more well-rounded officers. I mean, they're gonna like that was part of the interest in me at when I applied to the city of Los Angeles was they get a lot of city cops that are retired or want to work in that unit, and didn't really have investigative histories. Like if they were call shaggers, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Not always the case. And then the flip side, they get like really overqualified people, but they were like, put the light in your eyes type of like,
Yeah, where
hard,
you're like, aren't you a little
yeah, hardcore investigators. Yeah. But I was like a well-rounded cop that came from an agency that I could do my own cases, or detectives would help, or, whatever. And they like that. So it definitely gives you a little piece of everything. And like you said, like the training thing, like, yeah, maybe your department can't send you to be a DRE, can't send you for 3 weeks to go to a maximum security intake prison to observe all these drug things. But if they have a positive attitude towards training, so maybe they don't have the money, but they will be like, we'll let you go on shift if you can find one provided by the state, or, we can help you with expenses. Like, I see what you're saying. Like they don't necessarily have to like fit the bill, but if they're positive towards training and they'll make it work for you, that's the kind of place you want to be at. You don't want to be the kind of place that, like, I worked at a place once where we had a chief for a little bit that was like, this is why we don't send guys away to training, because they go to training and they come back and then they want to use their training and they want to change how we do things. And it's like, well, that's progressive law enforcement. You're supposed to like learn new tricks and use them. But he was old school. He's like, I don't want that. It gives me a headache. And he was the chief. So guess what? You weren't going to training.
I hope he said that with like the thickest of mass accents. I gotta say, one of the firefighters up here is actually, he works for Boston EMS for a bit, and he's from New Hampshire originally, but he's he and I constantly will do the Mass accent. So the first time we met, we were actually the guy that I was talking about that was kind of the sovereign, where he was being a jerk. I'm like, hey man, these guys, and he's like, hey, because the ambulance crew up here knew of my previous history working on the ambulance. So he's like, hey, are you Mikey? From LA? And I'm like, are you Pete from Boston? And he's like, hey kid, I'm like, what do we go to Dunkies? Let's go, come on down. What are you doing? And
that's great.
So we constantly give each other a hard time and, snap into this Mass. Like, I don't even know where in Mass it would be, but that typical Masshole accent. Yep. And not everybody talks like that from Massachusetts. I actually didn't know that was a real accent until I saw the town. Because I knew several people from Massachusetts that, I don't want to say talk normally, but didn't have that fake accent. And then I saw the town and they're like, we're going to knock over an Amica. And I'm like, oh, that's a cool accent, dude. I like it.
Yeah. No, it's a great, so in Massachusetts, obviously I don't have it at all, but my mom grew up in Lexington, which is outside of Boston. So she has a little bit of drop in the Caba, like a little bit of drop in the Oz, like a Kennedy. But then on Cape Cod where I grew up, the outer Cape, mostly no accent. But then up towards Barnstable and closer to the bridge, I ran across like kids growing up that had the accent. So it's kind of like spread. And then Worcester and Boston and all those urban areas are full on drop, Pak the Ka, Habit Yad, that whole thing. They are full blown, but it is hit or miss. But I like it. It feels like home to me because I grew up surrounded by it,
No, and I'm not knocking it. I think it's great. I mean, in California we didn't have accents. I mean, the only way you can tell somebody's from California if they're just like me, where they're like, "Oh, for sure, dude." Yeah. The laid back accent. Because I've had people up here where I've stopped them on traffic stops or whatever, or gone over to their house for a call. They're like, "You're not from here, are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, is it that obvious?" And they're like, "Well, just the way that you talk." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm from California, but please don't hate me. I'm not trying to change anything negatively up here. I was trying to escape that chaos down there. I'm a refugee. Please don't hate me."
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Mikey. Pleasure to have you, man. Thank you for coming on. I know it took us some doing, but I get it with the schedule.
Yep, and I appreciate you being so accommodating, Steve. And I love this podcast, man. Like I said, I've been a listener for a very long time, and you're doing some good here. And you've got some great people on that, obviously much more knowledgeable and much more wise than I am. But for those young guys, man, like don't listen to the general public. Don't listen to the hatred. I mean, I've lost friends. I've lost people stopped being my friend because I became a cop, even though they had known me for 25 years. They stopped being my friend because of my chosen profession. You could have things like that, but this is one of the last noble professions to do. As long as you just keep your nose to the grindstone, be a good guy, be honest, and remember integrity. Like that's one that's huge for me. Just be the best. You don't have to be this hard charger, door kicking cop, but just be a good cop, be a good representation of your department, help people out, do the job, make sure that you serve your citizens the best way that you can. And never forget that, man, and you'll thrive.
Absolutely, man. Words of wisdom, brother. Hey, I'm going to do the outro. Can you hang on for just like, I don't know, 2 minutes?
Absolutely. I'm going to run to the restroom if that's all right.
Yeah, go for it, brother.
All right, perfect. I'll see you in a bit.
Ladies and gentlemen, the great Mikey May, super fun conversation. Great to finally get him on. Guys, if you want to be a guest on the show, like I said before, thingspolicec.com is the place to send me a message, or steve@thingspolicec.com. Email me directly. This is the time in the show when we thank the Patreon sergeants, and who I'm talking about is the big and powerful Andy Biggs, Greg Gadboy, the great Adam Mihal, everybody, Chris June, the great Gary Steiner, Jake Pinedo, the great John Shoemaker, Lauren Stimpson, everybody, the handsome Lane Campbell, Seth Wright, ladies and gentlemen, the great James Rose, Tony Fahey, everyone, the great Ben Peters, Jason Lau, Kamen Hacha, Sasha McNabb, the great Scott Minkler, Tammy Walsh, keeping it down, holding it down in dispatch, William James Long, that's Deputy William James Long to you, thank you very much, Sean Clifford, the great Dennis Carrasquillo, Iceman from Motor Cop Chronicles, George Tessier, I'll see you at church, brother, Scott Young, the great Thomas Connell. Dan Carlson from Burley Boards, check him out. Doug and Kelly Newman, love you guys. See you at church. The great Dave Ellman. Elliot Sykes, everyone. Richard Tolles. Keep on trucking, brother. Christian, thank you for your service, sir. Jace Crow, Brad Thompson, everybody. Kyle Roberts, Zach Haney, the great Nancy Hammond, Clark Lecup, Adam McMahon, Ossifer, Andy, the great Sheriff Ronald Long, Zachary Fleet, everybody, the great Bentley Barnett, and Jason Labrie. Woo, guys, the list is getting long, and I love it. Thank you so much for the support, the continued support and dedication to this podcast. I want to keep it going, and I will keep it going as long as it's supported, and it doesn't cost me money, and you guys really help take care of that. So thank you so much. If you want to join the Patreon, the link is in the show notes, everybody. But see you next time.